Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to a little bit of Total War Warhammer 2. So today I want to talk about a unit that has been sort of in my sights lately as being an incredibly powerful and practical unit, especially against a lot of the things that people seem to take right now against High Elves. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a counter against Dark Elves right now, but against things like Norska, Beastmen, those kinds of sort of more numerous, high charge, shock value armies, I think the Phoenix Guard is currently probably one of the best options that the High Elves have. So let's take a look at sort of their typical mainline infantry, the Spearmen. The problem with these guys is that when you're up against something with very high charge values, you're losing out on martial prowess. Martial prowess is something that these units are assumed to have in terms of their cost, and you can sort of tell because they cost a lot more than a standard sort of Spearman unit. You can take this sort of standard Bretonnian Spearman arms with shields, and you can cross-compare them. And the High Elf unit has less hit points by a fairly substantial amount, a little bit more armor, they've got a better block chance. So, you know, you're paying for a little bit more for those things, but you're also paying less because you have less hit points. The leadership boost is very, very good, actually. You're probably paying a little bit for that one. Their speed is a little bit higher, and their weapon strength is a little bit higher. But other than that, they're a pretty similar unit. You could also compare it to, for example, the Empire's units. The Empire over here. And we can take a look at their Spearmen with shields. So these guys are a little bit more expensive at 375, but as you can see, they have a lot more hit points than the High Elven Spearmen. The Empire ones actually have closer armor and leadership, or sorry, same armor and closer leadership. Also a little bit slower than the High Elven Spearmen, but they've also got more melee defense than the High Elven Spearmen, which is really kind of crazy. So you're paying 125 points more for a unit that I would argue is not actually in any statistical way better. If you were to just take their blanket stat lines, I would say that these are pretty even units in terms of how effective each of them are. So what are the High Elves paying for? Well, they're paying for martial prowess. And this is a plus 12 melee defense and plus 2 melee attack, which sort of justifies that cost. If you take a look at their stat line, I would still say it's not worth 125 points more than the Empire one. And you can sort of take a look here at like what a 500 point Empire Spearman looks like. The 500 point Empire Spearman is actually like substantially better, in my opinion, than the High Elven Spearman, because he's actually got the effects of martial prowess, essentially. So you're now trading off 540 hit points for plus 10 armor, plus 4 leadership, and plus 3 speed, but you're losing out a point of melee attack and a point of melee defense. So at this point in time, like, the High Elf Spearman is actually worse than arguably a 500 point Spearman with shield from the Empire. And if you're not worried about having to fight against somebody who has got missile weapons, like, you know, you're up against someone like Chaos, you can take a regular Spearman unit that's 200 points cheaper and cross-compare it, and you're looking at a unit that, again, gives up a little bit of melee defense, but you're almost looking at 2 units of Empire Spearmen for the cost of a single unit of High Elven Spearmen. In fact, you could take 3 units of High Elven Spearmen and have that be equivalent to 5 units of Empire Spearmen. And I definitely know which is better value for the role in my eyes. The regular Spearmen are going to be much, much more on the table. They're going to be a much better damage sponge. They're just going to be around, and they're going to be a nuisance in a way that the High Elven Spearmen cannot be. So there's a definite inclination in my mind that the High Elven Spearman is just not very, very good at their role. But the bigger thing that makes them vulnerable against certain armies, like, they do have their place and they will do okay in certain situations. I get the feeling as though the High Elves were balanced around them being kind of mediocre, though. But take an army like, say, Beastmen, take an army like Norska. These units have got very, very particular sort of attributes that make them very good against High Elves. So let's take a look at, for example, a Marauder Berserker unit here. So we can take a unit like this thing here. They've got the sort of stage 1. We can sort of ignore that because that's kind of, you know, its own unique thing there. But they've got Frenzy. They've got a 33 charge bonus. They've got 52 weapon strength, and they've got the ability to have a bonus versus infantry. Their melee attack with their charge bonus is something like 73, except it's higher because they've got Frenzy. And their weapon damage is already ridiculous at 52. It gets boosted up to like 90, I think, is what it ends up being. So these guys have got really, really good hard-hitting attributes. Now, admittedly, for every 2 units of Marauder Berserkers, you can take 3 units of spearmen, but these guys will blend through 3 units of spearmen like they weren't even there. The most important element to this sort of comparison is that when you have a unit that's this reliant on the charge, because their statistics, if they don't get the charge, are good but not amazing, what you're going to find is that this unit charges in and immediately gets rid of martial prowess. And this is kind of the thing that gives High Elves difficulty in terms of holding the line. A lot of units out there, a lot of armies out there, have that ridiculously large charge bonus, and if they've got that ridiculously large charge bonus, High Elves just don't have the ability to hold the line against them. We can go from something that's relatively mild, the 16 from Black Orc Corsairs. That's actually pretty decent, especially on a unit that has high base stats and is already good at the roll. Witch Elves has got a crazy high one and Frenzy, and then you've got the Sisters of Slaughter. Pretty decent all-around charge bonus. Hargoneth Executioners, of course, are an elite unit. They've got very good charge bonus as well. And then you can get to the cavalry, but we can ignore that. The Highs do actually have the defend against large things, so if you're charging spearmen from the front with cavalry, then they are going to be negating some of that at the very least. But what we're talking about here is the infantry that people take. And against High Elves, I generally tend to see things like Black Orc Corsairs, I tend to see Witch Elves, I tend to see Sisters of Slaughter, I tend to see Hargoneth Executioners. I don't see very many Dread Spears, but they will never be the ones charging nimbly against High Elf units. They're going to be standing around the back line waiting for opportunistic cavalry charges or something like that. Even Bleak Swords have like a plus 15 charge bonus, although I wouldn't really rely on that to do anything or accomplish anything that important. But what we're looking at here is that a lot of people are taking these units that are really effective as a counter against spearmen, because what happens is they lose half their health pretty much right off the bat, and then they lose martial prowess, and the enemy charge bonus fades. This unit's now got crap stats. It's a 500 point Empire Spearman unit at that point in time. So yeah, like what do you do as the High Elves if you need to sort of hold the line against something that's that vicious? Well, the answer I've been using is Phoenix Guard. The reason is that these guys have got charge defense against all. Generally, I think people have been thinking of these guys as being solely a defender unit against really heavy, powerful monsters. But the reality is these guys are surprisingly effective at killing infantry, especially the way that people in those factions tend to use their infantry. Less so with Dark Elves. I think, again, I wouldn't necessarily rely on these guys with Dark Elves, but let's take a look at how Norsca sort of builds up a battle line. So you can end up with a bunch of, say, Marauders here. They're pretty cheap and they're pretty okay there. Or you can have some Marauder Berserkers mixed in there, and you can have some units of Marauder Champions with great weapons. Any of that sort of stuff going on there. You can have that sort of line. What they do in addition to that, though, is they've got something like, say, the Skin Wolves or the Femur Warriors standing literally on top of these units. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when the Marauder Berserkers hit a unit of Swordmasters, these guys are going to be absorbing a lot of hits there and absorbing a lot of the damage. Leave alone the fact that the 52 weapon damage is so freaking high that these guys actually deal good damage against Swordmasters, especially on a good charge. Even leaving that out, though, we can take a look at the fact that the Skin Wolves or the Femur Warriors or the Trolls or whatever it is that you're using are going to be able to deal really good damage to the Swordmasters while these units are sort of doing the tanking, because Swordmasters are not really well equipped to fight against things like the Femur Warriors or the Femur Warriors with great weapons or the Skin Wolves or anything like that. These units just do a good job against the Swordmasters. And when they've got that sort of combination of units, you can try to follow through with your own combination of units, but High Elves are so expensive that you're usually not going to be able to double stack things up. Same thing happens with these guys. They'll have things like Gore Herd with Shield, very, very high charge bonus, able to get in there doing a lot of damage, and then the follow-up is with something like, say, a Chaos Spawn or some Minotaurs. And yes, those are too expensive to really commit against every unit that the High Elves have in their line. But it does mean that they will be going through those units, and they're not going to be taking really much damage all to things like the Chaos Spawns or Minotaurs, because the unit taking a lot of the damage is actually going to be something like the Gore Herd with shields. So the reason that I think that the Phoenix Guard are currently really great against those particular armies is because those armies really rely on that sort of strategy. And the Phoenix Guard shuts that down completely, because if you charge a bunch of Femur Warriors and Norse Berserkers into a unit of Phoenix Guard, the Phoenix Guard is going to trounce them both. It does not give a crap about either of those units. It's going to basically be able to single them out and tear them both apart pretty easily. You're losing a humongous amount of bonus when you lose your charge defense, when you lose your charge bonus against these guys. So these guys are going to be able to stand there and tank out that fight really effectively while layering out the damage against both the units that are going to be charged in there. Also, I find that they're a lot better as character killers once an enemy character sort of flies in and tries to wade into the combat. These guys do a lot better than the Sword Masters do. So, in any event, let's take a look at one of the battles I've had, and we'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about that. I don't think I remember to save it, but it was my most previous game here. So you can see that like my opponent has got lots of Goreherd of various sorts, and Bestigor, some of the Centaurs with throwing axes and stuff like that. He's got Kazarak, he's got a Lore of Shadows, and the Gorbul. So this is not too atypical. The one weird thing is that he's got the Ungorherds instead of other things. These guys still actually can do quite a lot of damage, and I find do actually still tear through Spear Elf lines, just in the sense that if he's got 5 of them, and if I've got, say, 3 Spear Elves, he'll be able to kill 1 unit, then he'll be able to kill the next, or he'll suicide in 1 unit, and then he'll suicide in the next unit, and High Elf Spearmen can't take more than 1 of these guys at a time, so that's the way that sort of is there. I've got 3 units of Phoenix Guard, I've got the Signs of Mathlin, a couple of units of cavalry of all sorts of different stripes, Princess on a Dragon, and a Lore of High Magic Mage there with Soul Quench and the other thing, Apotheosis. So I am going to completely get screwed over by those Centaurs because I'm not paying attention, but other than that, this is going to be as it is. Yeah, it's got lots of stuff actually in these woods here, and I've sort of not been paying attention. I'm not paying enough attention to these Dragon Princes that are also sort of in these woods. So, yeah, lots of hidden units here, Ungorherd and so on and so forth. I've still got my general firing away at these Goreherd with shields, but apparently I hit one of them but didn't kill him. That's lovely. Gorbul takes a pretty big hit there. But they've got a lot of hit points on Gorbuls there. The one problem I'm going to have here, Phoenix Guard are unfortunately going to have to countercharge forward a little bit, but even with that, we're going to find our units doing a really good job there. He starts chucking axes into my Dragon Princes, which is shit, but you know, that's fine. I don't even notice this for like minutes at a time because I'm busy microing other shit. Fortunately, they are armored and have shields, so they aren't taking as much damage as you would think, but yeah, it is still kind of crap. Get a Dragon Breath there, deal about 600 damage to that Gorbul there. Lots of arrows coming in. Fortunately for me, like, once I'm in melee combat, I don't have to worry anywhere near as much. He's charging his general and that other guy in there, both of them on chariots. But, yeah, you can actually see a bunch of my guys exploding now, but that's relatively irrelevant. Over here, getting Penumbral Pendulums. And over here, like, he's got Goreherd sort of ready to receive a charge from the Silver Helms. It's not going to matter, they don't have charge defense or anything like that, but at this point in time, I charge into the rear with my Dragon, which is going to allow me to do some damage here. He's trying to counter with the Gorbul a little bit, but still got our Signs of Mathlin here soaking up some hits. We've got our Phoenix Guard here dealing some damage as well. So at this point in time, like, we're really just spreading a bit of terror here. That unit's terrified as well. He could have gotten in faster with these guys. Over here, we charged in with some Silver Helms and took out that Ungorherd. These guys are going to chase after these guys, but get distracted. I get a pretty decent shot with the Soul Quench against these Korok's Man Rippers, which I'm pretty happy with. But over here, get a good Dragon Breath as well in on that. But yeah, over here, we're just sort of allowing our Signs of Mathlin and our Phoenix Guard to sort of fight away here at these tough targets. At this point, though, I sort of need to deal with these archers because they'll eventually pick away at my stuff. Getting out of here with the Silver Helms, but we've got this unit of Phoenix Guard over here. We are going to eventually say screw it, have our Dragon Princes wheel back around and come back into this fight here. High Mage is going to come in and try and disrupt these Ungor Raiders, and we've got this unit of fresh Silver Helms coming in to deal some damage. Unfortunately, this unit of Silver Helms gets tangled on these destroyers of the Drakwold, but you know, that's sort of fine. I decided that I don't want to charge into the Korok's Man Rippers with my Princess, so instead I'm going to sort of run around causing havoc amongst these sort of units here. Silver Helms managed to get a good charge against these Ungorherd on the move, and that's going to sort of wreck them. He's going after the Mage with the Gorbul, but that's not going to be quite good enough there. And you can see that my Keepers of the Flame here is still in the fight, despite everything that's hit them so far. Including like we've had 2 characters run into them. We've had like, some spells cast on them. We've had an Ungorherd cast on them or thrown at them. Like, we had a lot of stuff that has tried to kill these guys. and they're still fighting away pretty effectively. Kazarak is also taking some pretty hefty damage, although he is able to sort of move through these guys pretty freely at this point in time. They've just been too in the fight for too long. Silverhelms over here managed to crack into another unit of the Ungor herd, crack into another unit of Ungor herd. This is, you know, sort of not a great situation for those guys to be in, but this is another situation, though, where I probably could have done a lot of damage just by cav spamming. But that's this particular opponent. There's plenty of opponents I've had that would not have died that easily from cav spam. I'm like, these guys are basically all going just suicide bomb on these guys, and it seems to actually be dealing a pretty decent amount of damage against the Korok's Manrippers. So I'm actually pretty okay with these guys all getting killed off here. They've already gotten 69 kills against some fairly tough stuff and dealt a lot of damage to heroes. Anytime you can deal some damage to heroes, it's just super, super good. I'm just not sure how much damage you actually deal when you explode in this game, but you know, whatever it is you want to do. I'm just having my mage sort of hide out here. I don't really want to fight with it all that badly. Over here, though, we got our sort of like last unit of Phoenix Guard. Got a decent charge against that global with a unit of Silverhelms. And at this point in time, even though he's got bonus versus large, the fact that we've got kind of like our Phoenix Guard in on this fight here, the fact that we're able to sort of deal a lot of damage to that dragon means that this guy is pretty much just screwed. And at this point in time, we just get the Silverhelms to chase these guys off a little bit. Kill the Gorbel with the dragon breathing all over it. So yeah, like that was a pretty vicious hit there. At this point in time, like I'm mostly gonna ignore the Centaurs and throwing axes. There's nothing I can really do about those guys. My mage gets beat up by Kazarak a little bit there, but nothing too serious. Destroyers of the World here, we're going after them with the Phoenix Guard because it's I don't really want to fight against anything else over here right now, but sort of have to, you know. I think I end up sending the Dragon Princes to just go chase because I'm out of things to really distract these guys. And if they're just sort of firing into my back this entire time, then obviously I need to do something about it. But Mage soaks up some axes there, but I'm gonna apotheosis these guys so that they stay in the fight. We did lose 2 whole units of Phoenix Guard in this fight already, which is a lot of Phoenix Guard to lose considering how durable they are. But, I mean, think about how much stuff my opponent had to throw at them and how much free reign that gave my cavalry and everything else. Like, it was kind of gross, actually. Just sort of breathing here on Kazarak. Our Silverhelm unit is basically already dead, so it doesn't really matter that much. I was considering going in on these guys, but I thought better of it. Kazarak here, Chariot, pretty tough, actually. Managed to catch up to the Centaurs with throwing axes for a little bit there, caused some damage to them, but we will lose that unit. Just chuck a Silk Wench after Kazarak there, deal some pretty good damage. And over here, like, he's chasing after my mage a little bit, but I'm sort of microing it, I'm paying attention to it enough. Storage of Drakwold here are kind of doing okay considering against a unit of Phoenix Guard, all things considered, but Phoenix Guard will inevitably win this fight here by quite a bit. There's 73 of them left still, they're not really that worried. Kazarak tries to plow into a unit with halberds and takes a little bit of damage on the way, but more importantly, he opens himself up to a charge from the dragon, so able to sort of do a Goomba stomp on him, and that kills him. At that point in time, my opponent, even though he's got this unit of elites, still just nothing left on the field here, so these guys are going to retreat. So despite being really heavily outnumbered, like the Phoenix Guard just, actually get kills and actually hold the line. There's sort of those two important distinctions when comparing them to the Spear Elves. Again, I think what I would do with Spear Elves right now is I would give them charge defense against everything. So that way they're at least going to have the ability to use martial prowess. Because right now there's too many things that charge straight through them and just kill them instantly, preventing them from ever getting any benefit from that particular bonus. And they're paying a lot of points for martial prowess. Like, probably... they're probably paying about 100 points worth of, maybe more like 50 points, maybe 100 points worth for that ability, and it's simply not worth it. 2 and 12 is something like you see on a general aura for multiple units for like 150 points. It's not really the sort of thing that I would say is really that effective there. 171 kills on the Dragon Princes, 118 and 213. So Silverhelm's just sort of rampaging through the Ungors as they were retreating. But more impressively, like, we got the Keepers of the Flame, Phoenix Guard, and the other Phoenix Guard holding the line against things like Heroes, Kazarak, Bray Shaman, and Agorbal, as well as the Goreherd. There's elites, as well as the Korax Man-Rippers. All of those units were sort of being held down and killed by the Phoenix Guard. The only ones that weren't really were the Ungor herds, which sort of bounced off them immediately. But if these guys were up against Spear Elves, they probably would have gotten a significant amount of damage at least through, if not kills. Scions of Mathlin, you can see, got 2 kills, which again goes to show how effective or not effective Spear Elves are. 109 kills on the Princess. So it really does let me get the work done with these other units while still also contributing. Like, hammer and anvil strategies in this game are kind of redundant when you've got an anvil that is also killing everything that's sort of sitting on top of it. So yeah, it's kind of a weird state as far as that goes. Korax Man-Rippers, man, they just went to work in this game. But in any event, yeah, so that's my video for today. Don't take Spearmen with the High Elves right now. I think that they just aren't really cutting it, and they don't really fill the niche that the High Elves can afford to take right now. Although, you know, they definitely can work, and I've seen some people make them work. I find it's just a unit that needs a slight bit of tweaking in terms of cost effectiveness against anything, really, because they don't even really fight monsters very effectively in this game. In any event, hope you found this episode enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.